you get to see me with glasses. Unfortunately, that does not improve my IQ. But what we can do is help you with your weekly investments. We're back once again. It's NFL playoffs with your favorite crew, myself, Jackson, and Grant. Let's walk on through this with weekly buy tiers. Probably the last one we're really going to be able to do with this because it's getting really thin with the rosters now.
Yeah.
Hulk smashes for this week. So the running backs, $66 for Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, and Bucky Irving. Yeah, this is the largest spread on the slate. In theory, you should be getting a Derrick Henry strong game here. We'll see how it goes. Joe Mixon, Bucky Irving, why should we like them this week?
Yeah, this is not super game script dependent. I mean, I feel like this game will be close, but regardless, the Texans' offense has looked pretty lackluster outside of when they get the run game going. So I think their only chance of kind of staying in this one, especially after the Dell injury, is probably just committing to the run, and I expect Joe Mixon to be well over 20 carries probably in this game. I think you'll see him get bottled up a little bit early, and then if things start to open in the second half or whatever, he could easily have a big game, score a touchdown, and soar over that projection.
Yeah, I think at this point, Bucky probably deserves to be in the conversation, at least for the wild card games with like Saquon and Derrick Henry. He's just been playing absolutely lights out football. Also playing in the game this week with the highest points total against a Commanders group who has the second worst red zone defense amongst all the teams in the wild card weekend. Also, allow 49.6 more yards per running back carry before contact. Only the Panthers are worse. I just think it's going to be a dominant week for Bucky here.
I like it. They're a bit of a run funnel as well, so I like that call. Receivers, I'm taking the opposite side of Grant here. I'm going with Nico Collins. Maybe, just maybe, we can get our pass game going, but the probability is not. Justin Jefferson, Booper Bop, two sides of the same game. Why should we be excited about these two insane receivers?
Yeah, I mean, Nico's going to need a ton of targets too, so I think that's a good play. The volume is going to be there regardless. In Jefferson's case, I feel like he's had a little bit lackluster performance the last 2 weeks. You've seen Hawkinson get involved a little bit more, which I think we'll be talking about later, but Jefferson feels like he's due for one of those smash weeks against a secondary that doesn't have like a true elite cornerback one. You've seen Jefferson receive a ton of blanket coverage with safety shading over the top of his side, which has led to a lot of production in other ways. And I feel like teams are finally starting to realize that when you do that, it just means that Addison goes for 150 and you lose that way. So I think you'll see a situation here where the Rams try to play him a little bit more straight up, and you should see Jefferson get pretty active in this one.
Yeah, this Cooper Kupp show is pretty much all about the defensive scheme on the Vikings side of things. The Vikings run the too high safety look at the fourth highest rate in the NFL. Cooper Kupp against too high rocks a 30% target rate, 2.59 yards per route run. And if you compare that to Puka against too high, who everyone is all over this weekend, 30% target rate as well, 2.49 yards per route. So Kupp is slightly better. And then it gets even wilder when you look at Kupp against cover two, which the Vikings have been running at the fourth highest rate since week 10. He has a 45% target rate against cover two, 3.9 yards per route run. So I think that if the Rams want to have a shot here, they're going to need to utilize Cooper Kupp like they used to. He's going to need to kind of shake off some dust, do his thing.
I like it. And it's kind of interesting looking at the Vegas totals. I'm surprised that's not higher than the Commanders Buccaneers.
Oh yeah, I mean that is also another shout, second highest total in this game for Kupp. Yeah, but you're right.
You could see like there's a world where the Vikings defense just kind of clamps up and puts a ton of pressure on Stafford, and then the game turns into a little bit of a lower scoring affair. But
yeah, I could see that. I just think we're going to be getting some regardless, whoever advances out of this game, that gets to play the Lions, and if you have that receiver, that's a nice hold at the minimum.
Yeah. I mean, I think it could also work out where the Commanders could easily win and then they get the Vikings, right? Or they get the Lions?
They got to win both.
If they beat the Buccaneers, they play the Lions, and the winner of this game plays Philly. Because they reseed the Because the Commanders would be the 6, and then both of these teams are the 4 and 5, so they reseed for them to get Philly, and then.
So wait, I thought it goes Lions would play Rams or Vikings.
Unless a 6 or 7 seed wins, because they reseed.
Ah.
So it's like the only way the winner of this game wouldn't play them is if either the Packers or the Commanders win.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, that just went completely over my head. I didn't even know that. So
But I
that
mean,
would also be the same for
the Packers should lose, and the Buccaneers are obviously a favorite, but that game's a little more narrow. Like it wouldn't be
that one's more
to win
narrow
either
as
way.
well.
So
like Steelers and Broncos, we can essentially cross off.
yeah,
Who knows? Maybe Believe Nation will actually pull through. I'm against that. But with that said, makes sense. I like it. Tight ends. Gotta love those tight ends, right? Kincaid is what I'm going with, the Kincaid Brigade. Give me the number one option for Josh Allen. See if he can cook in the playoffs. Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson. I think the Baltimore shout for tight ends is probably one of the most elite things you can do in fantasy throughout this playoffs. So I really like that shout. Walk us through why you like him, though.
Yeah, I think even Isaiah Likely could have some life. But Andrews has been great against the Steelers this season. And you add on top of that Zay Flowers is going to miss this game, so it's extra targets and stuff that are going to have to go to Mark Andrews. He scored a touchdown in both games against the Steelers so far, played well in that game just a couple weeks ago that pretty much decided the division. And it feels like another situation where Mark will probably have to do more or less the same role, plus some extra targets that are going to be there with Zay's absence.
Yeah, we're going with Hawk. I mean, his numbers still don't really look like pre-injury Hawk. That being said, he is still reeling in targets and receptions. He has the best matchup, I would say, of any tight end in the wild card round. The Rams have given up 7 touchdowns and over 1,000 receiving yards to tight ends this year. So I don't see why. I mean, I think he had double-digit fantasy points last game. I don't really see why it's not a big hot game going up against this pretty futile Rams defense when it comes to tight ends.
He had 8 targets as well.
Yeah.
Just need to convert on a few more of those, and he is cooking beyond belief. So I like that shout a lot as well. I was really hoping for a narrative game last time he played the Lions, but unfortunately, no. Maybe he'll get a redemption shot. All right, where we go to the next tier. All right, so the running backs. Probably the only Steeler I have any sort of interest in because George Pickens and Russell Wilson seem to now hate each other, but they should be playing from behind. So in theory, we should be getting more Jalen Warren. But that's really all I got there. Nothing too spicy. Brian Robinson, Jaleel McLaughlin. Why should we like them?
Yeah, B-Rob, kind of a similar take to what Jackson said about Bucky Irving. This game has the highest total. Feels like there's a lot of wiggle room for him to have carries around the red zone. Not a particularly great run defense. It feels like across the board in this first round slate of matchups, there's a lot of really good run defenses. It's hard to target on particular running backs just because of those situations. But Brian Robinson has a pretty favorable matchup in a game that they could have a lead in, or at least it'll be competitive. I don't expect this to be a blowout, so he should be relevant throughout the game.
Yeah, it kind of seems like Jaleel. I mean, Estime is a great shout too, I think, but Jaleel, I'd say at cost on most sites, whether you're talking PredictionStrike, DFS is a good shout this week after seeing, I think, 16 touches last week. Should have an even easier time converting on that volume of touches this week against Buffalo's run defense, who have given up the 4th most points to running backs in the regular season. So I think Jaleel is a fun little shout.
Yeah, I think Jaleel's a correct shout there. He's getting all the touches on the lobe right now. Yeah. With that said, we'll be moving on to the receivers. So I've decided to piss off the community and just go with the guy that makes no sense, Jaden Reed. That's really about it. No one wants these Packers receivers right now. I understand the concern with Love, but I just think we would have seen much larger movement if it was that concerning with Love, with Vegas's lines. But I've been wrong before. I'm sure I'll be wrong again. Rashad Bateman, Khalil Shakir. What should we like about them? I have a theory for Bateman, but Shakir, let us know. So explain.
Yeah, kind of similar reasoning to the Mark Andrews shout, but Bateman's had a return to fantasy relevance a lot of weeks this year, and without the primary target there, it feels like he's going to be asked to do even more and build upon kind of what he started during the regular season. He's been a huge deep threat, and this Steelers defense has given up a big chunk of explosive plays. The secondary isn't particularly great. They can obviously get a pass rush off, which isn't great for those deep shouts because you're going to have less time to get the ball off. But if the Ravens can just dial up the right protection in certain scenarios, it feels like you should be able to get one or two explosive plays out of Bateman, and hopefully he scores on one of those.
Yeah, I really like Wells' shout of Dalton Kincaid because of Kincaid's really high target share against man coverage, which we know the Broncos run a lot of. I wanted to just give Shakir a shout because I thought it might be kind of underrated this week against man because he's not always that guy against man coverage, but I do think he is definitely going to need to take a more prominent role with Josh Allen heading into the playoffs. He's also going to have Jaquan McMillan on him, who allows the 6th most fantasy points, 3rd most yards per route of any player in the wild card round. So I do think in this particular instance, man might benefit the usage for Shakir, and I think he's worth a swing.
I like that play.
Yeah, for Kincaid and Shakir, you just need to target the guys out of the slot because both outside corners are pretty locked down. So if you can get as many reps from the slot as possible, it feels like it should be a smash.
All right. So I think a fun way to make that first spark for those listening would potentially be taking Shakir with Josh Allen or Kincaid with Josh Allen's definitely probably going to be popular. Or if you just want to take as many targets like Grant's saying here out of the slot, take Shakir and Kincaid.
Yeah.
Or if Dawson Knox is somehow available, I wouldn't be surprised if he's around like a minimum projection. And, well, let's not get me fired today. On to the next one here. We're going to move on, and we're going to go with the tight ends. Likely Ertz and Goddard. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to find this condensed target tree. It's not too complicated there. Ertz, the man of incentives, and Dallas Goedert. So why should we be excited about these two here?
Yeah, the Buccaneers defense, the linebackers definitely can be a strong suit for them. But I feel like Ertz has really built up that connection with Jaden Daniels these last few weeks. Some of that is probably due to incentives, but they were also must-win games, so it's not like they could really just totally force him the ball. Both games kind of went down to the wire there, and it feels like Ertz has built up that rapport with Jaden Daniels to an extent where now he can trust him in these games. It feels like a situation where you're not really going to be staggering reps too much with other tight ends. If Ertz is their best option, he's going to be out there as much as possible in a must-win game that easily could be their last of the season. So it feels like Ertz should get the ball a decent amount on some intermediate routes, and hopefully he continues that touchdown streak.
I like that one. He feels like their wide receiver too, essentially, to me.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that's not a more popular take. But yeah, Goddard, why should we be excited with the man of the Eagles?
Yeah, I just think it's a pretty solid option. Might be a little bit slept on going into the playoffs. I mean, he came back from his knee injury last week. Usually, you don't see very high production at all in first games back. He ended up catching 4 targets for 55 yards, which I think was encouraging. So I like him to remain a core piece of this Eagles offense. Seems like he's not really injured at all anymore.
Well, I like it a lot. Back in shape, and this Eagles team is catching a lot of steam to be a playoff favorite. All right, so where we're sitting against everyone, this is where we get weird. All right, Cam Akers is the guy for me. Say something goes wrong with Aaron Jones or they get run out, maybe Cam Akers gets a little bit of run here. I do think he has some life. Ty Johnson, Hassan Haskins, why should we be excited about these two?
So. Yeah, for Akers too, there's also a situation where, I mean, Jones has been banged up on plays in the red zone a lot, especially near the goal line. He's just like kind of landed weird on things. There's situations where even if the game's close and Aaron Jones is healthy, you could just give the ball to Akers because he's more capable of taking a hit around there. Ty Johnson, it feels like the Broncos defense is good and the run D's good, and you can lock up both of the outside receivers more or less. So it feels like having a running back that can run a ton of routes out of the backfield feels like a bit of a mismatch in a way you can kind of target this offense because you get a slower linebacker on a guy that's capable turning on a dime and running good routes, and Ty Johnson has been that guy in this offense. You do have to worry about Ray Davis and stuff. I mean, all of these running backs have run routes and had big receiving yard games, but Ty Johnson obviously had that 115-yard receiving game against the Rams. It feels like a guy they know they can trust, and I expect him to be pretty involved in the game plan. So we'll see how that plays out.
That's the Bills running back I'd be putting my money on as well. He seems most like the Hassan Haskins. It tripped me out with the Titans logo for a second. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I know. This is a pretty simple play here. Gus, there's a chance that Gus is still shelved come game time this week. Hassan has 20 touches through the last 2 games, even saw the end zone last game. A lot of the Texans players on defense are coming back from injury. They still might be without a defensive end and a linebacker, though. So I don't know. I think it's a good deep shot, a fine deep shot relative to like the options we have in the wild card round.
Yeah, I think it's a smart take as well. He's been getting all their goal line touches essentially, while Dobbins is, unfortunately, the Texans were not looking too hot. Not going to talk about it.
It's not beating Zeke.
Hey, nothing's happened yet, man. You guys got this.
This is true. But with that said, my flag plant of the regular season that completely flopped on me. I'm going to make him a flag plant once again for the postseason. This is going to be the man for why we're going to make it out of the first round of the playoffs, but ultimately lose in the second. Deontay Johnson. I do think he's going a bit underrated. I think nobody is going to be interested in him because they're just like, well, he didn't do anything in the regular season. But he is going into kind of the perfect role, at least in my opinion, like filling in for Diggs mainly is what I'm expecting. So we'll see how he does. Maybe he catches a few passes. My dream scenario is perhaps he faces off against the Ravens. But you never know. Noah Brown, Dontavian Wicks. Why should we be excited about these two?
Yeah. With your shout too, I feel like John Mechie is also somewhat live.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Yeah,
his target share goes up a crazy amount when it's just him and Nico. I remember that being the case during parts of last season, and then this year in the 2 games too. He's been a lot more involved than he usually is. But the Noah Brown shout, kind of just high game total, could easily see a random play where he ends up in the back of the end zone. He seems to be a target around there. He's a little bit of a bigger wide receiver, and I feel like in a high pace game, there's just so much to go around, and it feels like a situation where most of these receivers could end up with a touchdown, and if you just get one from Noah Brown along with like 2 catches or whatever, he's already over his projection. So it feels like a shot I'm worth taking.
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar to Wells's take. Like, I kind of like that people seem to be sleeping on these Green Bay wide receivers a little bit. Christian Watson went down last game. Wicks ended up seeing the most targets, or not the most targets, but the most catches on the game. I think he could maintain that elevated role considering Romeo Doubs is still coming back from an illness. I mean, he's going to be fine to play, obviously. Christian Watson is still injured, so I don't see why he doesn't keep getting targets here.
That was honestly my favorite play of this whole thing. I was like, this guy should nuke, and no one gets that yet. So yeah. I really like that play.
Hell yeah.
Tight ends. He's back. The man, the myth, the Higbee. That's all I got. He's back. And what should be a high-scoring game probably could be in a 2-man rotation, 3-man rotation. We really don't know. But more often than not, McVay likes to kind of lean on his guys when it comes to these do-or-die situations, if you will. So I'd imagine we get a healthy dose of Higbee this weekend. Darnell Washington, absolute monster. Payne Durham. What should we be expecting from these two monsters here?
Yeah, just get the big fella red zone target, to be honest.
Yeah.
You see this big dude just rumbling into the end zone. I feel like at least once a game they throw him some little fade route, and
I design more stuff for him.
Doesn't, but
you gotta.
Yeah, if you're taking him, I can guarantee you will see a red zone target. Whether he does something with that or not, I mean that's
the game.
Leave it up to chance, but you'll see this guy rumbling around in the end zone. Big dude, can't miss him. Russ somehow finds a way to miss him at times, but he can get up 6'8", just feed the man in the red zone, get creative with some play calls. Right. It feels like that's the Steelers' only chance in this one, is to kind of do some random fluky things, and maybe getting the biggest guy on the field the ball is one of those.
I like that. And you can't miss them. Well, Russ does miss them, but
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually did overthrow him this week, which was a tough
Damn, dude.
tough scene.
It might be a good look, though. I mean, if he just corrects, you're golden.
Yeah.
exactly.
Kind of late on this Payne Durham train here, because I think Cade Otton is probably coming back. He's practicing in a limited capacity this week, but who knows? Maybe he's going to have the type of, I mean, it's the highest points total of the week. He could have the type of uprising as like a Noah Gray or something did on the Chiefs, where they started targeting him when Kelsey was away and was like, oh, we should actually incorporate this guy into our offense. Because Payne has had a touchdown in each of his last 2 games. Cade's nursing an injury. I'm like, maybe same vibe as Grant, where Baker just tries to find the big boy in the end zone.
I like it. I like it. Makes sense too. Well, that said, that's the buy tiers. Yeah, not too long, not too short, just a little bit too sweet. With that said, appreciate you all. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Invest accordingly. Spark accordingly, I guess. Just not if you're, well, am I allowed to make that joke or is that far too soon? That's probably far too soon. But yeah, stay safe out there. Until next time, peace, y'all.